Oh, hi, I'm Barry Cunningham, and here I am in this wonderful old library with one of my favourite authors, Robert Louis Stevenson. Who knows, if we'd been around then, he could have entered the Times Chicken House fiction competition for children. So why? Why do you want to write for children, and which children do you want to write for? In my experience, the most effective way is to look back at your own childhood, to try and find out those things that made you angry, that made you really resentful, or that were full of wonder that you couldn't quite explain, or something that made you truly happy, or when you were growing up, sometimes a thing that you really felt passionate about. Look back at the age group that was, and then you have your two main things. You have the age you're writing for and what you cared to write about. So here we are at the heart of the children's story-making process. We're going to deal with planning and how to write for children. I do think in planning it's very important at least to know where you're going with the story. So at least you know the end, so you can kind of structure how you're going to get there. I think some form of storyboard or character map is also very important, so you know where your climaxes are going to be, where you bring in your characters and take them out. I have a very famous author who killed a character in chapter 2, only to bring them back in chapter 10. I had to point out that that character was already dead. So a bit of planning is important. How? It's a vast subject, isn't it? So I'm just going to call out a few major points. I think dialogue is very, very important in children's books. Children are very used to characters in movies and television showing how they are, how they behave, what their characters are, what their motivation is when they're talking and when they're talking to other people. So try not to describe those emotions, always try to show and always try to show in dialogue, which brings me naturally to humour. Humour is a vastly important thing in children's books. Roald Dahl once told me that laughter was delayed fear. And I think that is worth remembering because children and children's characters can use humour in a variety of different ways. Often it's the only weapon that they have against kind of adult authority or adult oppression. So they can use it in a condescending way, they can use it in a terrifying way, the way that they can laugh at danger, or just in a laugh about way to diffuse tension. Very, very important to remember to use humour in children's books. I love animals in children's books as well. I think they can provide a wide resource for you. They can be companions, you can even tell stories from their point of view, they can provide real emotion. Animals, I think, are wonderful in children's books. My old mentor, Kay Webb, who used to run the Puffin Club, told me that her most common advice to children's writers was start at chapter 2, because again, going straight in the action and explaining where you are and everything later is a great device. And I always think that telling children what their characters are eating as well is very important. Meals are very important in children's books if you think about it. The two most common questions of childhood are what's for tea and are we nearly there yet? Both things you should remember. So feedback, very important to get some before you submit your work. Now you can try with children, but in my experience, children will always love what you've written. So best way is to get it from other responsible adults, booksellers, librarians, colleagues, just to see what they think your strengths and weaknesses are. But even more important, try reading your work aloud, because then you can see yourself and hear yourself what works and what doesn't. So submission. Not beating your publisher into submission just yet, but really how you go about submitting your completed work to the Times Chicken House Children's Fiction Competition. The first thing is to really look at those terms and conditions carefully on the website, on the Chicken House website. And that will include the synopsis. Again, don't make that too long, make it as brief as you can, but covering what goes on mainly in the book itself. A covering letter. Now, a lot of people skimp on the covering letter, and I think that's a very bad idea. The covering letter is a very important piece of your work. It should include what has inspired you to write, why the story is important, why you think it really works, the big idea behind the story, maybe a little bit of practice on how you would describe that big idea, and a little bit about you. So very, very important, that covering letter. And of course then submit the whole manuscript to us. So very, very good luck with the Times Chicken House competition next year. And who knows, I could one day be working with your book.